Welcome back to Your Relationship Roadmap. My name's Keith Flynn. I'm here with Mr. Michael Worthington, and we're chatting about the top 5 issues that I have to deal with clients in sessions.
And we have started off with some light ones. He did anger and talked about what causes that, or one of the root causes being hurt, and then how some of the strategies. I like your strategies. I think that's really important. Abuse, that was a heavy topic. If you've missed them too, please go back and watch them, because I think there's a lot of really good knowledge and insights in there. And I will stress, one of your strategies or your methodology or your attitude is to make things move quickly. You're not into dragging out this painful relationship for 1-2 years of therapy. You come from a different angle, going, let's get to the cause, let's have it analyze this properly, and you move very, very quickly with your clients.
Well, that's why I said in the previous one, I do a good 5 to 6 hour session. Because what we really want to do is get everything out. And, for example, if it's a wound, you want to clear and bring everything to the surface. You just don't want to put a Band-Aid over it where it can still fester.
Yes.
So you want to bring everything up so we can start to clear. It will tend to make things raw, but what we're doing is getting real with what's happening in the relationship.
Yes.
Because, as I said, what's really tragic is people love each other, but they just don't know how to make it work. Because they don't understand their own behaviours, and they don't understand the other person, and they're being triggered, and they're just running old patterns. So part of what I'm doing is exposing those old patterns and behaviours.
When you talk patterns, and we were talking arguments in this session, do you find the arguments are circular? They just seem to be the same old thing that people are arguing about?
Yeah, typically you get people coming. Well, you get one or two things.
Right.
Typically, you'll get people arguing consistently over the same thing that keeps coming up, or you get people arguing over the tiniest of things, like whether it's buying a cup of coffee or something. Seriously.
Really?
Yeah.
Why would you argue about that? Sorry for my naivety.
Well, with those ones, typically it's like they're so full up. There's been just so much been happening that's built up over the relationship, so much resentment. It's like they're a balloon ready to pop. Or the expression, the straw that the straw that broke the camel's back. In other words, any little thing sets them off. So it's not that it's a little thing, it's just a little thing that set it off because of everything that's underlying.
They're actually totally full.
Yeah.
Yeah. I heard an analogy of that once with people who go through chronic tiredness, and they go, oh, I had a good day yesterday. And then the next day they collapse again because their actual body's totally 100% exhausted. And they think this 5-minute rest has done it, but they need to deplete that whole thing. And is that the same with arguments and anger and all? They're full up, so you need to not just go, well, you've been good for 5 minutes, so I'm 100% better. You're not. It's going to take a little bit.
But what I do is give people a framework to look at relationships differently.
Right.
Because when you've got things like abuse and anger and arguments, these are just patterns that are continually playing out.
Right.
In most cases, sometimes you get the odd one where it's not. But in the ones where it's regular, what you want to do is start breaking up the pattern. So anything new that you do in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming terms, what you're doing is a pattern interrupt.
Yeah.
So as soon as you start to think something different, you're going to start to break up the patterns.
Okay.
Like in the previous one, we were talking about anger, people pulling out the knives. One of the things that my clients are now doing is when they're having an argument and someone's getting angry, one of them might say, oh, was that a knife you threw at me? Was it a big one or a little one? Would you like me to throw it back? So there's a pattern interrupt. In other words, they're recognising the knife that they're throwing.
Right, yes.
So what in the past would escalate into a really hostile argument now gets diffused with a bit of humour, and they start to, in a more fun way, recognise that they're actually throwing a knife because these patterns have been going on for so long.
When you talk patterns and we talk arguments, do people just kind of learn how to argue then? Do they just learn that everything somebody says they just say the opposite to, just to be argumentative?
Generally, well, let's break arguments down a little bit. In the section I do in the online course, I simply say, well, let me ask you, how can you, what could you sum up all arguments into one statement?
I probably couldn't. I don't like arguments, so they annoy me. There you go. No, Michael's getting angry.
So you're an avoider. Anyway,
Yeah.
here's how I define. All arguments can be defined in one statement.
Okay.
I'm right, you're wrong, and I'm not listening.
See, I thought that when you said I was an avoider, I thought you were wrong then as well. Yeah. So it's an interesting thing. So arguments are really derived from me going, well, I'm right and you're wrong.
Yeah. I'm right, you're wrong, and I'm not listening to you.
Okay.
Because one of the things that you'll see when people are communicating, if ever you see anyone interrupting, well, that's a clear indication that they want to bring their opinion in.
Yep.
Another thing you see in communication is someone talks and then someone immediately comes back with their opinion. So people aren't being heard.
Okay.
But you just think about it, whenever you see people arguing, they're not listening to each other and they think they're right in the situation. So you have two people thinking they're right and the other person's wrong. So the very simple solution to all arguments is you can never have an argument if just one person listens.
I remember I was at an event one time, the guy was on the stage and you might as well call him a heckler. It wasn't really a heckler, but was arguing against a point. And he diffused it very simply and he went back and forwards 2 or 3 times. And all of a sudden he turned around and said, you know what? He said, there's something, I'm not actually hearing what you say, so I'm going to just be quiet for a minute. Can you just rephrase it so I can understand it? And he listened to me, he said, just tell me again. And he made him tell him about 2 or 3 times. He says, now I've got it, I really appreciate it. He didn't agree with him, but he just went, I got it, I appreciate it. And you could see the person in the front row just go, it was almost like they'd won.
Yeah.
But it was like, he just diffused it that way. I thought it was rather clever.
Yeah.
But I liked his word when he said that he didn't agree and he didn't disagree. He just said, I appreciate it. And I thought it was a good word to use.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because in my world, everybody is right. No one's wrong.
Okay.
So the job is to understand why the other person thinks they're right. So if we go back to, again, the first series that we did, when we talk about respect,
Yes.
respect is being able to sit and zip it without any interruptions, without any opinion, analysis, diagnosis, without making any assumptions, just being present to listen to the other person, to understand and be able to accept their viewpoint. You don't necessarily have to agree with it.
When you're doing it, and like the online course, I really like your online course, that's why I talk about it, as well as the strategies, are there exercises or pointers that people can follow to keep on track?
The way that I do that is the online course gives you everything, gives you the whole picture on how to build a relationship and gives you like over 40 strategies that you can play with. So the idea of having lots of strategies is, I don't know about you, but I always like to have choice.
Yes, I do.
Not just doing the one thing. We need to master it, but when we have choice, there's going to be some things that are going to sit well with some people, some things are going to sit well with other people. So with the online course, I've actually built in a 52-week regular email just so that they can have a weekly focus over a whole year. So I treat it as a year program.
Yes.
Because if we look at our life, let's say we live to 100, if we just take 1 year out, 1% of our life, and I'm not talking about 8 hours a day, but I'm just talking about putting our attention on 5-10 minutes a day, perhaps around about that maximum.
Yes.
If we just put our attention on our relationship and developing new skills, by the end of a year, we're going to have a sensational relationship. We're going to be different people.
Absolutely.
And the idea of the online course is people have got the material that they can keep going back to.
Yes. Fantastic. I love the regular emails. I like how you say they're just like the the focus points. Here's a little thing to focus on for the week.
Yeah.
It just gives, and I suppose if you're in a relationship and the two of you are participating in something like that, it can end up being quite good fun. You'll be testing each other. Are we still focused? A bit like your knife analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and again, I like to be realistic because sometimes I've had people that have argued and they don't speak to each other for 2 weeks. So what I say to them is, well, let's be realistic. Let's halve it. Have an argument and see if you can speak to each other after a week. 50% improvement. But
that's a big improvement.
But be realistic. Well, let's work on then getting it down to 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
Then let's get it down to a day. You might get it down to an hour. You might get it down to half an hour.
Yeah.
Might be 10 minutes. So if we look at change being like that, being more incremental rather than absolute. Because again, I'll talk about another thing later on, probably in our next one when we talk about affairs, about what the most damaging thing in a relationship is. And it's not affairs.
I think that's a good time to take a break. And I want to come back to the next one now. Most damaging thing in a relationship. Keith, always fascinating talking to you, my friend.
Pleasure, Michael.
Just quickly, obviously, people, we will put the link underneath, but what's the best way for someone to access this online course?
The link will be below. It's at www.yourrelationshiproadmap.com.
Fantastic. And we'll see you next time.
See you next time.